You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Corey Naito, David Neese. I'm sorry, I was gonna say your name, and I saw what you posted in the chat earlier, the Corey Naida, and I was gonna throw me off for like.
My last name gives the people a lot of fits. It's all good.
I juggle it a lot. I'm sorry. I shouldn't juggle it as much, but I do.
All good, man.
How are you guys feeling today?
Good. Excited to talk about another Eagles No, guess we're not talking about an easy Eagles victory, sadly. But I definitely excited to move past that one and talk about what they can do to improve and how they're going to be able to beat the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday.
Leave it to the Eagles to have the only opportunity to shut the world up, to right their wrongs, to steer the ship in the right direction, and they freaking blew it. Like, literally blew it, because the Giants blew them out 34-17, which I feel like we all predicted the same score, but opposite, obviously. But let's start with main takeaways. I mean, I think my main takeaway from that game is the run game looked good in the beginning. Those first couple of plays, Saquon, I think we rushed for like 16, 18 yards, if I'm not mistaken. And then what happened next? I need to know where the offense went. But what's your takeaway from the game, Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I thought after those first two plays, Saquon Barkley was going to absolutely run all over his former team again to let them know how badly they messed that whole situation up last year. He ran for 31 yards on 2 carries, and then that was kind of it. I think he finished with 53 yards around that in the first half. And then similar to the Denver game, he was kind of nowhere to be found. And I know they were down and the game kind of dictated that maybe they had to throw the ball a little bit, but it was just beyond puzzling to see how poorly they played against the Giants. And I don't think anybody, media, fans, experts, expected that. The coaching staff was asked, oh, well, it looked like you guys were out physicaled or, manhandled, so to speak. And they're shaking it off, except Vic said on that last drive defensively, they got out physicaled. But it just seemed like the defense was zapped from the last 2 weeks, playing 72 snaps against Denver, playing a ton of snaps in that heat in Tampa 2 weeks prior to hold on for dear life. And it looked like it kind of caught up to them Thursday night. And give credit to the Giants. Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo, they have ignited that fan base. They have ignited that team where they have belief. And will it take them to the playoffs? Who knows? But I don't know if Eagles fans can look at the Giants as an automatic win, even when they play them next week at the Link.
Yeah, I have the same kind of takeaway. If my notes are correct, Barkley had 56 yards on 8 carries at halftime and finished with 58 yards on 12 carries for the game. So he ran 4 times for 2 yards in the second half. The running game was struggling, but in addition to that, I think the play calling, you've heard Lane talk about it being predictable, but it's also panic-ridden at times. Like, they started getting scored on and they just completely abandoned the run. And in addition to that, it's so telegraphed for many reasons. What set they're in is telegraphing it. The fact that they get the play in late is telegraphing it. The fact that they get out of the huddle late so they can't disguise what the play is. And then they're just not executing. I mean, it's just so multi-layered of issues with this team. But I don't want to put the onus all on one person. I think Patullo is kind of learning as he goes, so to speak, and he has not been good. But at the same time, Nick has the, autonomy to override any play call he doesn't like at any time. And he did that plenty in 2023 over Brian Johnson. So, ultimately it's on him because he can stop this and change things how he wants it to be. But yeah, I think in this game, Dallas Goedert was going, Saquon was going, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both had like 5 catches for 73 yards in the first half. Even though they were losing, everything was looking good. But then they just stayed in that same panic mode the whole second half, and it just spiraled down there. And when you have 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, you're putting your defense in a horrible predicament. And that's how, I don't remember what it was, 19 points, 18 points in the fourth quarter the week before, and very much the same this week, 17 points or something in the second half. So they're not helping each other out, I guess, to put it in the simplest of terms.
This team, and I feel like I've been trying my best not to harp on this so much, but I know I harped on it a little bit on last week. But this team just doesn't look prepared. They look exhausted. They look like they're defeating themselves. Like you said, they're playing panicked. We're not seeing anything done strategically, offensively. It's literally like, I just opened the package, the Madden package, and I started playing quick play and just let it loose. This team is not approaching the game from the perspective that they approached it last season, where it was, they wanted to put their foot on their opponent's throat and they wanted to run with it. You felt that last season. There's a lack of want, I feel like, from this team. The only person that wants it is the one that everybody's saying that needs to be traded. A.J. Brown is showing he wants it. He wants the ball. He wants to win. He wants to, he wants to be a part of what needs to be done to achieve success, right? I need Jalen to get rid of the Kangol hat. I need dad cap Jalen. I need Jalen with the attitude, with the chains out. Like, I wanted him to come on the press conference like, that's what I want to see. Yes, like that's what we want to see right now. Like, because this offense, yes, this team is 4-2, but it all comes back to the offense. The defense is exhausted. The offense looks stale. Saquon has 0 stats pretty much. AJ speaking out, Devontae speaking out, Lane speaking out, and the center of it all, we have our QB saying that he needs to be better. We have Nick Sirianni doing his best Nick Sirianni he does year in, year out at this point, saying that they need to find solutions. But the recipe for success is what they did last year. Yes, they were predictable last season, but they were physical. They didn't care. They wanted to run it down your throat, and they wanted to show you that you couldn't stop them. There's just no will in this team right now. And I don't know if you guys agree with that idea that this team just doesn't have the want to succeed right now.
I wouldn't say that. Being in the locker room, you can hear from the guys that they want to fix this. They want this ship to be turned around. I know Jeremy Fowler reported from ESPN that he was at the Thursday night game, and a veteran player told him that this has the making and feelings of the end of 2023, and they need to do everything they can to avoid that. So it's definitely on their mind. I think it's just a cumulative effect. I know we talked about this a lot last week, and David brought it up. It starts with the offensive line. This was the best offensive line last year, and then you can argue the year before. They are not playing up to that standard this year, whether it's injuries. Mailata seems to not be as dominant. Lane has missed back-to-back games, the Tampa and Denver game in the second half with some injuries. Cam Jurgens is struggling still to get back from his back surgery to get 100%. So if you've got those guys not paving the lanes for Saquon Barkley, and David mentioned the stat of, how little yards he gets before being already touched, that already puts you behind the 8 ball in the run game. And then you're trying to pass, and they're not sometimes giving Jalen the best pass protection. I mean, if you look at that interception that he threw late in the game on Thursday, if you dissect it, his read wasn't terrible. I mean, if that was cover one, or if that's what he thought, Jahan Dotson was most likely his first read on that out route. Now, I know there's screenshots going around, and it's like, oh, look, A.J. Brown was wide open in the top of the screen in the end zone, but yet a safety there. And I don't even think Jalen got to that progression. I think he just saw what he saw, said, hey, this is my read. This should be it. He made a bad throw. And, I mean, the guy, it's his first interception of the season, and it's week 6. I think everybody would take that. It's just being magnified because it essentially was the nail in the coffin in a uninspiring performance overall from all three facets of the game for the Eagles. So I wouldn't say that they don't have the will. I just think pressure might be building where they're trying to overcompensate and try to get things done. I mean, Kevin Patullo said today that they had a great meeting offensively and they're all in high spirits and they know what they need to do. And that's all great. And that's, word candy. They got to show that what they're preaching is being put into practice. So I think there's a lot of blame that needs to go around. I know Kevin Patullo's taking the brunt of it, but I mean, you look at Jalen Hurts ranking among NFL quarterbacks this season. He's only 15th in completion percentage, 19th in yards, 23rd in success rate, 13th in passer rating, and 30th in sack percentage. So it's not like Jalen's lighting it up either. And again, it stems from the offensive line, but you need Hurts to play a little bit better. You need the defense to get back to where they were. And I'm sure we'll talk about the defense here in a little bit, but there's some missing pieces. I think Howie Roseman overestimated how important they would have been if they had stayed here.
Yeah. Since you touched on the offense, I'll touch on the defense. And I know it's not a popular thing to say to criticize Howie Roseman and their front office, but depth is a huge reason for this. I mean, last year you had, just at edge, you had Sweat, you had BG, you had Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, who you could bring along slowly. They even went out and grabbed Bryce Huff, who was supposed to be a really good addition. It didn't work out, but they were still building depth. They had Milton Williams. At corner, you had Slay, Isaiah Rodgers. And this year, they have unproven talent at every single one of those spots. Keely Ringo, a waiver wire, a Dory, Brian Young and a Jomo at DT, and Zadarius and Uche at edge. And this depth is just painfully obviously not as good as last season. And that's a big part of the problem the defense is having, because they don't have anybody. Like right now, it already looks like Keely's out and Adore's back in at cornerback. And that's never a good sign when you're flip-flopping who you're going to, be starting at CB2. Last year, Slay, Quignon, and you had Isaiah Rodgers, like I mentioned, to, step up. They don't have anything like that this season. They're scrambling on the waiver wire, and you might have to see, how we pull an in-season trade. But even those, as great as he's been and everything else, he hasn't been too great at that. Like most
Robert
of the
Quinn.
in-season additions, yeah. I mean, you can, Golden Tate. I mean, you can go on and on with these pickups. In season they weren't that great. So I think they may have overvalued who they had behind some of these players, and it's coming back to bite them.
And if I could add to that real quick, David, you mentioned the defense. I wrote about it today about some edge rushers that the team should target. They're trying to replace 13 sacks from Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. That's a big chunk of sacks and just pass rush that just isn't on that defensive line anymore. And that's a big thing. And you mentioned CB2, and I know Vic Fangio's not going to say, oh, well, we don't have that person to fill in right now. I mean, he's blunt, but I don't think he's that blunt. And he said, we got to get somebody to play better, and somebody's got to settle in here and be the guy. Now, can that be Jacorian Bennett when he comes back from injury in a couple weeks? I don't know, but he's behind the eight ball. He's got to get back up to game speed. And if Quinyon Mitchell is out this Sunday with a hamstring injury, this is going to be a very, very scary matchup against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison with either J.J. McCarthy or Carson Wentz at quarterback.
Making a trade would be great. It'll be, it'll light up the stars, right? You feel good after, like, if you acquire a cornerback or edge rusher. But at the end of the day, I feel like, this team has way too many. If they're a water tank, they have way too many holes to plug and not enough hands to plug it. And I'll keep preaching this. It starts at the top. I mean, this team just doesn't look prepared. They don't look like they're all there. And yes, they're dealing with injuries on the offensive line. Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson at times, Tyler Steen's first year. And going back to David's point about the front office, this offseason was pretty critical for Howie. And this offseason should have been better from Howie, because you won a Super Bowl with really good players that didn't cost that much. I know, when Mekhi Becton was preparing to sign with the Chargers, me and Dave were going crazy trying to figure out if he was going to stay with Philly. I even got sentimental about it because it's like, it makes sense for him to stay. Isaiah Rodgers, it was 2 years, $15 million. How do you not keep that kind of talent that will be a surefire CB2? Letting go of Milton Williams and Josh Sweat both was, I think, it was too much. It was way too much for this defensive line. I would get, losing one of them, but losing both of them was a big hit because then you lost BG, who retired. There's a lot of holes that I feel like, even draft-wise, I mean, in the draft, they probably have Makuba and Campbell are the most memorable players at this point. If I'm not
Yeah,
sure,
I mean,
I can't remember after that who they drafted.
Some of the linemen are still making their way. Ty Robinson might see some more time, but yeah, I mean, obviously Campbell and Makuba are the two biggest names. I wonder, and I'm just throwing this out there, I have no idea. Do you think Howie's trying to get ahead of the curve like he typically does with extending players to contracts and already looking down the pike and is like, whoa, I got to pay Jalen Carter. I'm probably going to have to pay Jordan Davis. Maybe I get ahead of the curve and give Cooper DeJean a lucrative contract, but maybe not as much as what he would get after his fourth and final year of his rookie contract. Same with Quinyon. Like, I'm just trying to think, why would you not bring in Isaiah Rodgers, like you mentioned, or keep Becton for the price tag that they cost? I know Isaiah Rodgers, he seemed a little upset when he talked about it at Devontae Smith's celebrity softball game during the summer. They asked, what transpired between you and the Eagles, and he had nothing. He had no bad words to say about Howie or the front office. He was very thankful for giving them the opportunity. He said it just comes down to business, and he had to take care of his family. And the Vikings
were getting so quickly too, right? Like Rodgers was one of the first few Eagles to sign off the team.
Yeah, it was relatively quick. So I'm wondering if Howie, obviously not punting this year, but you're coming off a Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot of people want you to repeat in the fan base, but does it soften the blow if they don't go far because they won the Super Bowl last year and he could kind of reorganize and get his chips in a line to sign the guys that are going to cost a lot of money on defense? We know how much money they put on the offensive side, but these young studs, they're going to want top dollar too.
Yeah, I don't know for a fact, but I was very much under the impression, I spoke to Isaiah Rodgers one time, I was very much under the impression that he basically was not assured that he'd be the starting corner. And he was given that in Minnesota. And that pretty much was the decision. Now that's me just reading between the lines of what was said. That's not a direct quote, but that's what I intimated from the conversation, was that basically he was not given, the job, and Minnesota basically did. So that would answer a lot of reasons of why, and that would have nothing to do with the front office. That probably was more Fangio related. And as far as the draft picks, like y'all said, Campbell and Makuba, I mean, nobody else that they selected has contributed anywhere. I mean, Ty Robinson had 3 snaps the whole season prior to last week. Mac McWilliams hasn't done much. Smile Mondone isn't playing. Drew Kendall, Kyle McCord, Miles Hinton, and Antoine Powell-Ryland aren't even on the team. Or maybe APR is. I don't know. He goes back and forth so frequently I can't even keep up. But and Cameron Williams. So, to your point, Corey, the draft has not been as, effective as far as production on the field this year as it was last year. I mean, the 3rd pick last year was Jalix Hunt. He was on the field. Obviously the 1st and 2nd round picks of Cooper and Quinyon were starters, as soon as both were healthy in Cooper's case. So they were contributing more, and maybe they thought that magic would continue again and they'd get that same type of production. But, you're not going to replace a lot of these guys like Milton Williams. I mean, a lot of people laughed and said he was a product of Jalen Carter being beside him, but that's not proven to be true. He's still performing really well. And they just simply just don't have the depth. And as far as, does it take a sting off to not win after they win a Super Bowl? I mean, I guess so. But at the same time, you're dealing with a lot of players in their prime, like A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts. I mean, these guys are, desperately trying to win right now. I don't think they're going to, want a mulligan for a season because Howie wanted to push some contracts. I think the window is right now, especially when you factor in the rest of the NFC. I mean, who else is out there that's like a perennial winner like the Eagles right now? There really isn't a team. I mean, there really isn't one. I mean, there's a few who are good, but there isn't anybody who's been around for years and years that, have been as effective as the Eagles. So this is their time. This is their window.
But looking at Eagles teams of years past, they're only good when they have really good depth. And it's not like, super talented depth. No, they're good when they have actual players in their depth that can actually,
Like in
do
17.
some damage. Yeah.
They
and then
didn't
even
even
last
have
year,
a lot of elite players. It was just depth.
yes. And it was guys that were bought into the culture. They were bought into what, they were bought into each other. And I don't know if a lot of the AJ Brown noise this season has become a bit of a surface distraction for the team. And I don't put that on AJ at all because, I like the fact that he's more vocal than Jalen. I feel like that's why, why him and Jalen work so well is he says things that Jalen won't say. But at the same time, I don't feel like a lot of the guys are bought into each other as a unit. Like I was I don't know if I said that early in the podcast or before the podcast with Corey. But Michael Strahan had came out and said on one of his shows, he's like, the hardest thing about winning the Super Bowl is the year after. Like certain guys feel like that they're the reason that you won the Super Bowl. So that a lot of people are not, a lot of teammates are not committed to each other because everybody's, thinking that they're the guy. And I wonder how much of that little bit of ego has trickled into the locker room where it could be one or two guys that are setting it off and setting that kind of feeling within the locker room that's causing this little bit of a ripple effect where it just seems like it just doesn't seem like a connection. I feel like you could see it when Saquon talks. When Saquon talks, Saquon's talking kind of like he's trying to be the glue and trying to bring everybody together. When everybody else is talking, everybody's just frustrated. Like, they just had the worst day that they could possibly have had.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, the equity that Nick Sirianni earned in winning that Super Bowl, he had the autonomy to select his offensive coordinator, which isn't working out. And, he kind of had Brian Johnson as a scapegoat in the 2023 season after they lost the Super Bowl because that wasn't his hire. But this is his guy. So this is a lot different in my opinion. So I don't know. You add an inexperienced play caller on a team that was ready to win a Super Bowl. Again, I think we touched on it last week. When you aren't able to look for a coordinator until late February, you're way behind the 8 ball. But I do think that a really good offensive coordinator just got fired from the Browns. Is that who it was? I can't think of who it was. How do you say his name? I'll have to find it.
Stefanski?
Yeah.
No, Stefanski's the coach, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the head coach. You confusing with the Titans firing their head coach?
Yeah, because the Titans, I feel like they fired everybody.
I'll find it in a second. I was just writing about it. I'll go find it. But, they're just, my point is he gets available during the season. There's just nobody like that, at the end of February and March. And they're behind the 8 ball, and that's what they end up having to, settle for. And it's, pretty much bit them every single year after the Super Bowl. In 2018, it got them with Mike Groh, 2023 with Brian Johnson, and thus far in 2025 with Petullo.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like they gave the keys to an inexperienced driver to a Ferrari. Like you mentioned, this is their window. They've got all the talent in the world. This offense should put up 28 points sleepwalking. So for me, and we talked about it a little bit, it's hard to be good at something if you've never done it before. And this is a lot of play calling and being in the feel of the game. Vic Fangio said today, "Hey, I didn't make good play calls to help us out defensively." That's a long-time defensive coordinator saying that. Like there's something that goes into understanding the game flow, what's working, what's not working, and it just seems that when things are working, they just throw them away. I mean, you look at some of those drives in that Giants game, they look good. Same in the Denver game. There's flashes, there's spurts, But as Lane Johnson said, that doesn't score points for the most part, and that's not going to win games. So I don't know what they're going to do here. They need to fix it for sure. You know, they're in a better spot record-wise, and Dallas and Washington are doing the Eagles favors by losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to. So it's not all falling down at once. I mean, they still have a game lead heading into week 7 here, but I just don't know if they have another second half collapse. They've only scored 18 total points in the fourth quarter, by the way, this season, prior to Thursday's game. I don't know if this locker room will hold back anymore because you've got Lane Johnson speaking out. I know Saquon said that, yeah, we were predictable last year and we got to get to that. And I agree with him that they were predictable, but they didn't care. They knew they were going to
We
run.
saw a lot of the RPO last year. Like they've gone away significantly from the RPO.
And I brought this up in the last episode. Kevin Patullo might not be wasn't calling the plays, but he had to be in those offensive meetings. He was the quarterback's coach. So
they consider him to be the architect when they were selling him to the fan base. Like, yeah, this is the perfect hire because he's the guy behind it, the brains behind everything.
Right. So where is all this? Like, where did all that go? Again, we know the offensive line is struggling with injuries, performance, but how do you not implement the RPOs? How do you not do a little play action, even early in the game? Just open up with a play action pass and say, hey, we're going to keep you guys on your toes. I would love to see on Sunday Jalen Hurts under center. I know he won't be under center, but even in the gun, hand it off, fake a handoff to Barkley and go deep and see what happens.
I mean, at this rate, he might miss it if he goes deep the way he's been missing these deep shots lately.
Well, sure, but at the same time, at least they're putting the defense on notice. Like, hey, we are going to switch things up here a bit. We're not going to be the cookie cutter offense that we've been running. So I just don't understand how they show spurts where they can march down the field for 12 plays and chew up 8 minutes off the clock for 75 yards, and then they go 3 and out 4 consecutive drives. It really is head scratching.
It feels like one of those things where it's kind of like the way they're acting and as a collective group is that they're walking into the boardroom and they automatically think that they're the smartest guy in the room, full of people that are just as qualified as they are, but everybody else is putting the work in. And I know, I hate to beat this dead horse. I know that, preseason doesn't really matter to a lot of people. Preseason leads to a lot of injuries at times, but preseason matters still. Like it's still a thing for players, especially for offensives, like with a new coordinator, like just one drive. That's all you need. One drive, get the guys out there for 2 games, whatever the case may be. And again, it just feels like the Eagles as a whole, they think that they're just the smartest guys in the room. And when you operate like that, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on this is how long of a leash does Howie and Jeff give Nick Sirianni? Doug Peterson was fired not too long after winning the Super Bowl. And not so long after winning the Super Bowl, they shortened his leash and they started hiring their own coordinators for him and creating a group of coordinators at one point.
I mean, I don't think they're – go ahead, David.
I said I think it took him 3 years to fire Doug. He was fired in 2020, right? Like they gave him 3 seasons. If Sirianni struggles, I do not think he would be given that same length of time because I believe they were really close to getting rid of him at the end of the 2023 season. So he struggles for back-to-back seasons. It's probably over.
Well, I would go even further. I was wondering if they were going to keep him around after that 2021 year where he started. They were like 2-6 or whatever it was, and he kind of turned it around.
Shane Steichen.
I think he built
turned around. Yeah, let's clarify that one.
I think he's built some equity, but as you mentioned, like this is a fan base. This is a team built to win now.
So, a lot of money on the payroll to win
right
now.
So there's definitely pressure. I mean, this is one of the biggest moments for Sirianni as a head coach. The 2023 season might arguably be the biggest on how he was going to right the ship, and unfortunately he couldn't. They had that uninspiring game down in Tampa to get booted in the playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. This
Brian
is
mentioned the front office being, thinking they're smarter than everybody, like Howie and Lurie. Well, I think that they do, and I think they have a track record that kind of proves it. I mean, they've gone to the Super Bowl with multiple different head coaches. They're clearly not afraid to get rid of one. You don't see what they do very frequently. They'll move on very quickly if they don't like something. And lastly, Jeffrey Lurie isn't getting any younger. He wants to win, and he wants to give his son Julian a team that's, at the top of the class of the NFL. So, yeah, I don't think that they will settle for mediocrity at all. That's just not how this organization is done. I mean, even Andy Reid, who was the greatest coach of all of our lifetimes in Eagles history, I mean, he had back-to-back seasons that were not good and dream team. And even with his son passing away in training camp right there, they still moved on from him. So they'll definitely move on from anybody at any time if they think it's the right move. And if they think that the culture isn't working anymore, well, that's what he's hired to do because he doesn't call offensive plays.
Where's Joe Brady?
I don't know that he's anywhere.
Still? No,
I don't even know that he's anywhere.
Did he get fired from Buffalo?
he's the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I guess he's OC.
Yeah,
I've been pounding the table for that man to be the head coach of the Eagles for the longest time.
Yeah, he's been with the Bills since 2022.
He calls his own plays.
Yeah,
Listen, we're far from there. We're very far from that. But I'm just saying, like,
but it is the cheat code with head coaching. If you can call your own plays, that's what's made the dynamic of Andy Reid so great. And the Eagles have tried to copy that in some ways. They try to find defensive coordinators who have no desire to be a head coach ever again. Like they did that with Jim Johnson. He was here for over a decade. He never wanted to be a head coach again. Fangio doesn't want to be a head coach again. Spags apparently doesn't want to be a head coach again. But that offense is Andy Reid. So they can go through whoever they want over there. And if you can get that kind of dynamic, it's almost a cheat code in the NFL because every other team is hiring a new OC every 2 years. Even if they're not the one calling the play, they're going somewhere else. Doesn't even matter.
He's been the guy.
It's Sean McVay.
It's one of those things that the Eagles are due for. And I'm not saying Nick Sirianni is getting fired next week, right? But I'm saying like David has said, like the Eagles are going to do what the hell they want to do at the end of the day. And I do think I do believe he has a bit of a short leash despite winning the Super Bowl, just because one, we're seeing 2023 all over again. Two, he has weird behavior on the sidelines in the last couple of years that, it could have been, disinteresting the front office. But this team, like, you're paying your wide receivers a lot of freaking money. They're not going nowhere. You gave Saquon another contract. He's not going nowhere. Jalen's got a big contract. The offensive line, they're hurt, but they're not. None of those guys are going anywhere unless they replace the right guard or the right guard. And defensively, like Corey mentioned, you got to start paying these guys soon. So if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, like I don't have time to waste on my head coach who's been around the team for what, about 5 years now, or
5 years. 5 years.
I don't have time for my fifth-year head coach to figure things out. They should have been figured out a long time ago. You should have had a system in place where, if you're losing a top coordinator, the next guy behind him has to be the right guy. Like if I'm an owner, I don't have patience for that. And you got to wonder, especially after Super Bowl win, the way they won as well, is Howie and Jeffrey's patience running thin.
I mean, I think we'll see if they don't make I think they'll make the playoffs, but if they don't go deep in the playoffs, right? They don't go deep, or if they end up losing late and the offense doesn't really find its stride, I think you're going to see what they did last year, where they're going to basically handpick the offensive coordinator again. I mean, they basically said, we're going with Kellen Moore. Nick said, it was a collective agreement, but
they're doing Nick's job for him at that rate. Like that's my thinking about going to, like, in that case, you just go in a different direction. You get a guy who's going to call his own plays, like David said, and develop guys underneath him that are going to be out in and out, but you don't need them.
Well, yeah, you can, but you don't know who's going to be out there either. Like the Eagles are a wonderful destination, but does Joe Brady want to be a head coach? I mean, he's got a pretty cushy job, I'm sure, running the offense with the Bills, although they're struggling right now.
Mhm.
I mean, some of these offensive coordinators, they don't grow on trees. They take a while to develop and get into a rhythm. And again, Nick's job is kind of to be that vibes officer, if you will. And so far, he's done a pretty good job of getting that locker room to play for them for the most
not
part.
this year, but
Well, I'm saying overall out
Yes.
of the 4 years, I mean, are we really complaining that Nick Sirianni hasn't kept the locker room together?
You have this year so far, which again, this year is to be determined, right? But then you have 2023, which we all know how that went into shit pretty quick. So it's like he's not bulletproof at the end of the day.
No, he's not. No, I agree. I mean,
He's
like
solid
David
enough,
said,
but he's not bulletproof.
right. I mean, I think he's bought at least next year if we're talking about a failed season here. I think they're going to give him at least that that platform where like, okay, hey, we're going to kind of take the blueprint from 2024 and we've got time to interview and hire an OC and then maybe they do find an OC that could take over as head coach, as you mentioned, Brian, where, okay, hey, he's the offensive coordinator. Nick's message isn't really getting to the guys anymore. We need a fresh voice, and they elevate whoever that new offensive coordinator is.
Yeah, Lurie doesn't meddle tremendously, but the two spots where he puts his imprint is head coach and quarterback. Like he wanted Carson Wentz, and he also wanted Jalen Hurts. Howie gets a lot of that credit, but Lurie was having Lincoln Kennedy over at the facility. They even tried to, talk him into being the head coach. I mean, they were fascinated by Jalen Hurts' ability. So those are the two areas he watches the most.
And he wants
and
QB
even
numbers
as far
to be
back as
real
Vic.
big QB numbers.
Yeah, and even Vic. I mean, he took the risk there. They took some hits bringing him to that organization too. But the head coach and the quarterback are the two areas he puts his hands on, and he thinks everything else will work. If he controls those, he believes, the players and everybody are the ones who win. So, yeah, I don't think quarterbacks or head coaches will stay around here very long if they struggle for any amount of time because he will pull the trigger.
Heads will roll at some point. But the big question is, will heads roll if the Eagles blow the game against the Vikings, which I think we're all going to have a very interesting idea on. It's going to be Jalen Hurts versus, I think, Carson, if I'm not mistaken. They already rolled out JJ?
No, McCarthy might be able to play.
Okay. So it's me, Jalen versus either Carson and JJ. Eagles secondary, down Quinion Mitchell possibly, going against Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson. What needs to go right for the Eagles against the Vikings defense? Let's start with that. Let's start with the offense. What needs to go right offensively for this team to actually be able to put the last two losses behind them? I think I mentioned before, like, I feel like there's no sense of strategy. David's mentioned that, there's been a sense of panic at times with the offense. Kevin Patullo, we all agree that he needs to rely on the run game. But does that mean I think they need to incorporate the RPO just because it gives you strength against a defensive line, especially with a banged up offensive line. What are your thoughts on what the Eagles need to do to attack this defense?
They're going to need to figure out a good plan and be on the same page quickly. This is a very good Vikings defense. If you're not familiar, they've got some players. They're currently second in the NFL, allowing the second fewest passing yards per game. They're only giving up 158 a game through the air. Third down conversions has been a bugaboo for the Eagles right now. Minnesota ranks fourth in third down conversions per game. So this is a tough defense for the Eagles to navigate, and they're going to have to rely on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to win their matchups. And they're going to have to try and give Saquon some running lanes and open up the passing. I mean, basically, they got to play a complete game, and that's what they haven't done in 6 weeks right now. So this, I know the Eagles have had some success against Minnesota over the last couple of years, but this is a different-looking Vikings team. You've got Isaiah Rodgers, who we talked about earlier in the pod, where He's going to want to show that the Eagles made a mistake not signing him. If Carson Wentz plays, you're going to have that whole storyline of a revenge game. Not that this isn't the first time he's played against them, but this is probably the best set of weapons he has around him in his entire career. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a tough test. And for me, I think you got to somehow just do what you want. Like Saquon said, they got to stop giving a F about what defenses are trying to do and just play their brand of football. And I think if they go out and kind of push the Vikings around, score on an opening drive, I think that could give this team some confidence.
Yeah, I mean, Corey nailed it. They got to play for 4 quarters. That's what they haven't done for 6 games. They have played one great half, one terrible half in almost every single game. And they need to enter the matchup building rhythm and, try to set the line up so it's pushing, so it's aggressive, some stunts, some disguised looks. Hurts calls a lot of the plays from the playbook up at the line. He looks at the protection. He has the call sheet. He chooses one of 3 plays of what they're doing. And I've started to wonder if he's the one who doesn't want to do the RPOs. I really don't know, because it doesn't really make any sense, because he does have the autonomy at the line to call from a few of the, play calls there on the sheet. So I don't know why that doesn't happen, but I agree. It all starts with the run game. Down and distance is better when you can establish the run. It opens up play action, just so many more things. And, right now, if it wasn't for Dallas Goedert exposing the seam in middle of the field, they'd look a lot worse. I mean, he's been the most offensive, capable player this season in the passing game. And I think the middle of the field is probably the best part to attack Minnesota, because their linebackers have struggled in coverage.
Now, the Vikings will be facing a bit of a gas defense. Like Corey mentioned before, the team the defense played 72 snaps before the Giants game, right?
Yeah, in the Broncos game.
So they're facing a pretty banged up defensive line, without the presence of Zadarius Smith, who just recently retired out of nowhere, which we didn't really get to speak on. But I'm pretty sure we're all pretty surprised by that move. And it just feels like we've been saying that there's no depth along the edge. There's no depth along the defensive tackle, especially with Jalen Carter being banged up. We'll probably see Keely Ringo, Dory Jackson starting in the secondary. Defensively, are you? Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, what are your concerns? Well, that's my concern.
Yeah, that's it.
It's yeah. How do you guys feel about the defense against the Vikings offense?
I think we just all alluded to it. It's that wide receiver versus cornerback matchup, which is going to be the biggest determining factor, in my opinion. I mean, that is going to be a gauntlet for 2 cornerbacks who just have not played very well. And Adoree Jackson is Adoree Jackson. He's been in the league for 10 years. Former first-round pick by Tennessee. Yeah, he's pushed. He's a 10-year vet. He's got a floor that you know what you're getting, but the ceiling is not high at all. Keely Ringo, opposite. He got burnt a good amount of times, but they have nobody else. I mean, I don't know who you're putting else out there at cornerback aside from Keely Ringo. And if you're the Eagles, you got to kind of hope that the kid figures it out. I mean, he's got the physical tools. He's tall, he's lengthy, he's athletic. But if Mac McWilliams is another scratch, I mean, there's nobody on this depth chart. Like, I'm looking at it right now. There's quite literally nobody after Ringo and McWilliams. So I don't know where they go unless they move Cooper into the outside. That, and if that's the case, that means they're in trouble. Like, they are getting torched. So I don't know what they're going to do. I that's going to be the biggest factor for me on the defensive side. Defensive line, it'd be nice to see if Jalen Carter can get back. That heel injury kind of just popped up out of nowhere. Vic Fangio said he found out around the same time the media did that he wasn't going to be available, but he said that they knew that could be a possibility, so it didn't change the game plan. they're going to have to get to somebody, whether it's Carson Wentz because he's prone to make mistakes, he tries to do too much, or we saw a little bit of what J.J. McCarthy is. He showed one really good half, like in week 1 or week 2, but other than that, he's been a rookie. You can frazzle him a bit and get to him. So the quarterbacks and getting pressure on the quarterback, which is something the Eagles have not done all season. So basically, like the offense where they got to play a complete game, the defense has to do a lot of things that they haven't done all season.
Yeah, Corey nailed it. I mean, the only move they have is to put Cooper outside. You could move Makuba if you had to in the slot. He can play that. He's nowhere near as physical. He's nowhere near as big a body, but neither is Mac McWilliams, who they would have to put in there either. They just don't have the same size. And I think he hit on all of it. I mean, you're looking at a team that, due to injuries, is not, establishing very much pressure. And that causes a lot of issues. It makes cornerbacks grabby. It makes you have to cover for longer periods of time out there. And that doesn't bode well when you have two, satisfactory type cornerbacks. So if Quinion isn't a go, this could get really ugly, and you're going to have to hope for Carson Wentz to play hero ball or McCarthy just getting confused by Fangio's defensive scheme.
It could get ugly pretty fast, and I can't shake it off that this just really feels like 2023 all over again. Just a bit more confusing.
But way earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson in 2 games against the Eagles in his career, 17 catches for 207 yards.
And
he did
one of those
he
games,
did the bulk of
nothing.
it in 2023, where he had 159 yards on 11 catches.
Because Slay shut him completely down on one of the prime time
games. That very personal.
In 22, he had 6 catches on 12 targets for only 48 yards.
Yeah, and I think Slay had 1 or 2 picks in that game, and he dropped one too. I mean, he played him really good. So who are you picking, Corey?
Yeah, we're going to the game.
We're in your fantasy team, Corey.
We're doing the game predictions already?
We might as well at this rate, because I think we're all in the same place where it's like, like that meme where it's like the happy face behind the crying face behind the happy face little sign.
Before I get to the game predictions, we did a poll on the Flipping the Birds Twitter, X. Make sure you go follow it at Flipping Birds Pod. We asked what the biggest concern for the Eagles is right now: offensive inconsistency, O-line injuries, lack of pass rush, CB2. We'll start with you, David. What do you think won that poll?
I don't know. I'll just stick with what I voted for: offensive line. I don't know what won, but that was my vote.
How about you, Brian?
Nick Sirianni was an option?
He was. There's only 4 options, so I'm not giving Nick. Nick, I don't think Nick is the problem yet.
I'll go with inconsistency, honestly.
Yeah, offensive inconsistency came in at 44%, O-line injuries 30%, CB2 18%, and lack of pass rush 8%. So it's this offense, if they can put a full game together, I think it's going to help smooth out a lot of things. But if we're going to game predictions, I'm not feeling good, boys. I'm gonna say the Eagles fall in this one. They're gonna fall 28-24. I just don't know how they stop Addison and Jefferson if Quinion Mitchell is out of this game. If Quinion plays, I would change my prediction and probably say the Eagles win on a game-winning field goal. But if we're going into it as there's no Mitchell and Adoree and Ringo are your 2 cornerbacks, I don't know how they stop those 2 wide receivers. One of them's going to have a big game. So I'm going to say they're going to end up losing their 3rd straight game for the first time since the awful 2023 season.
I'll be a little more optimistic, and I'm going to go with Quinion is going to play because I just don't want to watch a game with those 2 cornerbacks starting. So I'm going to go with 23-20. The Eagles, and Cooper DeJean baits Carson Wentz into a bad throw, and it's a pick 6 to win the game in the 4th quarter.
I'll go 20-17. I think the defense shows up. I think the Eagles offense doesn't put the complete games together, but I think they do a little bit enough to nudge it against the right direction. I think it'll be a Saquon game, honestly, but I'll go 2017 Philly. So we got two on one.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just looking up the Vikings rush defense. They are nowhere near as stout against the rush as they are against the pass. I think they're in the bottom half of the league in rushing yards per game. I got to pull it up. I think they're like 24th or something. So, yep, 24th, right on the dot, 132 yards per game. So we thought it was going to be a Barkley game against the Giants, and it wasn't. So maybe Barkley will say, hey, let's not give an F of what the defense is trying to do, and let's just pound the rock.
It definitely could be. So we'll definitely be back next Tuesday to review the game, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well for the Eagles and their fans. But until next time, we're Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Corey Neidl, David Neese, and we'll see you guys next week.
Flip.